prevent this from happening, but it happened. Okay. Okay, very good. So I'll just wrap. I'll start from the top. Welcome to this event organized by the Global Commitment Committee. What we're trying to do is basically take global events and make them local. Okay, how global events affect local. In this particular case, we will, without further ado, I want to begin with a conflict, and just Zoomers, hopefully you're there and can be seeing this. Zoomers, are you there? Can you let me know?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, okay, so well, basically what we're going to be looking at is the following. What do the wars in Iraq 20 years ago, the Syrian civil war, the war in Ukraine have in common? Well, if you look at it through the lens that we normally look at global politics, not much, because I just mentioned discrete national entity. Rather, today's lecture is trying to get you to refocus on conflict by looking at a concept that's called human security. If we look at the lens of human security, then what do all of these conflicts have in common? Well, they led to displacement of people. Now, a lot of the people that you see displacement of, you probably hear about in the news. What I want to do is to bring you today the voices of the displaced directly to here, and that's in California. Now, having said that, what are we going to look at? Migration and displacement has been an unfortunate aspect of human history, okay? But what we're going to look at is most people, and think of yourself, we don't like to leave home, right? What are we going to look at today are what are the events that coerce us and compel us not only to leave home, but traverse continents to find safety and security. Without further ado, I just want to go into a kind of a brief overview. If you've seen this iconic painting of Picasso called Guernica, go back, whether we were looking at the Spanish Civil War, what was happening behind the scenes of a painting like this was not only destruction from the air, but the beginning of a humanitarian tragedy that began with displacement and coercion and compulsion from Spain, all the way, if we look at it from a human security perspective, all the way through World War II. Okay, in other words, the Spanish Civil War and World War II are considered distinct conflicts. From a human security perspective, I would argue they're very much linked. Okay. Sure enough, a replica of this image was featured at the lobby of the United Nations. And why is it featured at the United Nations? Was because Guernicas were not supposed to happen ever again. That's why the UN was created. But sure enough, Guernicas do happen. In this particular case, I think this is my ex-girlfriend married this guy. I think it was her rebound guy. Yes, okay. So we see somebody at the UN kind of lobby, right? But the point is, if we look at Syria, right, Guernica did happen again. And this is simply Guernica being applied to the Syrian conflict, right? Now, what I'm going to say is not only did Guernica happen again in Syria, it was a rehearsal for the war in Ukraine. The bombing, indiscriminate bombings of places, this is called Aleppo-nica. Saying Guernica came to Aleppo, and then I would say Aleppo became a rehearsal for places that are basically occurring on a daily basis in Ukraine, whether it's Kyiv, Mariupol. Okay. Here's our foreign indifference to these conflicts. Here we see a reference to the foreign indifference in the Spanish Civil War. And what was one side fighting for? Democracy. And that's what any Ukrainian will tell you today, what we're fighting for, right? And here you see kind of great powers on the sidelines on the eve of World War II. And if we go to kind of a case like the Syrian Civil War, we still see that indifference. A lot of similarities with the Spanish Civil War and the Syrian Civil War. In this case, Here we see a foreign fighter in the Spanish Civil War. You might all know him. This was George Orwell. And then again, other similarities. Look at the flow of refugees from the Spanish Civil War. And look at the flow of refugees from the Syrian Civil War. Now, let us look at this point in our humanity, where refugees, in this case, the humanity and the individuality of the refugees were lost. They were, in fact, instrumentalized to basically bring up the most base xenophobia in the United Kingdom on the eve of the Brexit vote. And so why do I convene this lecture again? To bring kind of humanize not only people we call refugees, but to give them individual voices. So, and of course, if we know in this country, it was the case of how the refugee crisis became politicized, okay, and that we needed reminders, please take a seat, that we needed reminders of what refugees were kind of dealing with. With Syrian refugees, when we say the global and the local, this was an initiative that was organized by our own professor, Freddie Avalos. Okay. What did we do on the local level? Was to organize kind of a what happened to what I'm going to show you is here you might see an individual kind of the lack of individuality and the masses that are fleeing displacement, dislocation. This was a picture I took whether it was looking at the story of Syrian refugees in Rome. Okay. You know, what we could do on a local level. This was a homework assignment for a Syrian refugee I tutored in City Heights. In 2016, what happened in our local community? Well, an election on a national level, whereas of 2017, a travel ban was about to be imposed. Students asked me back in 2017, what can we do about this travel ban? And I said, you have local initiatives where you can volunteer. In this particular case, this was the story of a young boy named Muhammad. He was a Syrian refugee, recently moved to City Heights. And on that particular day, I was chosen to be his tutor. Now, a tutor at City Heights is basically where you help them do their homework, do kind of creative activities with them. So this was his creative activities, stickers of dinosaurs, trains, so on and so forth. His name is Muhammad, okay. But then we did another interesting exercise, and it was this with Legos. Once it was completed, he asked, okay, now, what do we do next? Muhammad said, let's destroy it like my house was destroyed in Syria. Now, what did I have to do? Because after our day ended, basically, what do you do? Yes, we take apart the Lego houses and put them away. But what did I have to ask the organizers that day? I asked him, can you please leave his house intact? Let him have one house that remains intact in his life. Sure enough, what happened after I handed Muhammad over to his dad? Muhammad's brother was born that day. Muhammad had a brother that came into his life, okay? And I think of kind of his mom who might have been pregnant during this journey and just kind of the story of, I wonder if Muhammad to this day, this was back in 2017, remembers the person who helped him build a house on that particular day. These are the local initiatives. So we're gonna have somebody coming from the House of Ukraine that can talk about what can you do on a local level. But still there. If you want, talk to me afterwards, right? And then, speaking of then again, what kind of unites the story? This was February 24th. It's simply a few days after the invasion began almost a year ago, where I think of this particular child, this voiceless child. Where is this child now? Where did they end up making it? But obviously what you see is also kind of a hidden story. And it's this, the hidden story is, I wonder where the father is. You see, this is a woman who, there is a father in this story who had to leave his wife and baby behind and go on the front lines. And I wonder to this very day, a year later, did the husband survive? So what I'm going to introduce to you is a couple of stories. One of our speakers here you'll see is Yulia. Here she is from Ukraine. Yulia is sitting in a restaurant in Prague. It's the year 2019. And we're going to look now at her story, what happened from her story from 2019 to the present. One of her Ukrainian colleagues in my class. So these are all students of mine. This is Dmytro, wearing a traditional Ukrainian dress called vyshyvanka. Yulia and Dmytro's life is going to be forever transformed. As of now, okay, I needed Facebook to see if Dmytro was still alive because he would be deployed to the front lines. He ended up losing his best friends a few weeks into the war. His best friend went into a helicopter. What happened to Yulia? We're going to have her voice. But let's look at this picture. And Yulia, let's see here. Here is Yulia. And again, this was a karaoke night. And I want you to look at the two students here. They're Afghans. And who would have guessed in 2019 we could take this happy picture? Karaoke bar, okay. But it's just amazing with the span of a couple of years of how the lives of the people pictured here would be disrupted. Both my Afghan students and my Ukrainian students, okay. Let's have a tale of two students. In 2021, okay. Hey, let's see. Hopefully the meeting is recording. Oh, thank you. How do I get to the share screen now? Yes. Thank you, please. God bless you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Just want to show, this was filmed by one of our Afghan students. Showing what was it a few days after Kabul fell. This is the view from his living room. 2019, we're in Prague. A few years later, this is what he's seeing from his living room. TFAS is a program I teach in Prague. Sorry. Again, one of my former students. What human security is about is to put you emphatically in the eyes of the people who've lived through these events. So it's the 20-year anniversary of the Iraq War is approaching. And so what I want to do is let's look at how the events that began in 2003 transformed one individual's life. Zahra is my student from Iraq, a fellow Iraqi, and hopefully she'll be joining this program called TFAS this summer. But Zahra, the easiest way for you to do is maybe talk and then just tell me next slide and I'll advance them for you if you don't mind. I just want to make sure. Are we recording?
Yes, it's recorded.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so go ahead, Zahra. Just as you talk, you just tell me next slide and I'll advance it for you.
So hi, everyone. I hope everyone is doing good. I just want to start basic. And I'm from Iraq, Baghdad. I'm 23 years old. Next. Would it be easier for you if I share my screen?
Go ahead, try it, see if you can. Inshallah, you're right. I gave you permission, but I'm really happy.
I'm gonna move fast and I don't want to tell
Try
you.
it. Try it on your end. You can do it. Push.
Is it shared?
Let me go ahead and advance on your. Go ahead. Stop sharing
Okay.
on your side. Then what I'll do is you just say next slide, and then I'll move it.
Okay. Okay. Your screen is
Okay.
okay.
I think we're good. And okay. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So next, please.
This one, can you see it?
No.
I am an image of Baghdad.
He's seeing the other screen, I think.
Did he freeze again?
Yes, I think so. Unfortunately.
Someone is dropping.
No, I,
Everyone.
okay, everyone, hopefully you can come back with us. It's currently reclaim host. Go ahead, claim them. Okay. Yeah, especially in a classroom.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, sorry about this. Hopefully we're back. Go ahead. Okay, that's good. So let's
Can
start.
she hear?
Zahra, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, very good. So we're going to. Go ahead, shoot. No, not you. Let me just start recording. Oh, and it's recording. Okay, go ahead. Okay,
Now she's
So
easy, perfect. Go ahead.
okay, perfect. So I'm Zahra from Iraq, Baghdad, and I just wanted to show Baghdad before the invasion. And next slide, please.
No.
I think it's better if I share because I think it's with the slides and everything, it's becoming too much maybe for, I don't know.
But this is so beautiful.
Maybe it's another laptop, yes.
Professor, I think it's really better if I share the screen. I think it's with the sharing thing that it's.
Try it, yeah.
Can we try, please?
yeah.
Go ahead, try it. Yeah, go ahead. Do I need to give you permission?
No, I can share. If you just yeah,
Okay.
can everyone see my
Okay,
slide?
hopefully it will work.
Oh, she's trying to share it. Don't share yours. Yep.
Okay. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, we can. Good.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I was I'm a survivor of two wars in my life, in Iraq war and in Yemen war, and I want to explain everything about this in a really short way. So Iraq war, as I showed, that was the picture before, and that's after. Iraq have destroyed after this invasion was really difficult for Iraqi people. I have seen the war. I was 3 years old. I lived the war. I used to see tanks downstairs our house. My family was affected by this war. Part of my family, I lost some part of my family in this war. Luckily enough, we we could leave Iraq after many attempts to leave. It was really, Iraq really has been affected in this war because Iraqi people did not, how to say, expect this war, the invasion. They did not expect it. And the result was even worse. So we had to leave Iraq eventually. And we moved to Yemen in 2004. In 2004, we moved to a beautiful country. It was amazing. That's Yemen before the war. But in 2014, the war happened in Yemen, which in my opinion, it was a proxy war between other countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran in Yemen. Of course, there is a lot of factors to it. I have a really biased opinion about the war in Yemen, and it's really devastating. Yemen still is suffering from the war. Yemen is still in a really bad humanitarian crisis. That's Yemen. In Yemen, I also lived the war. I was 14 years old. Our house was destroyed in Yemen. We had to really leave the house maybe 3 minutes before it get destroyed. But I really want to emphasize something here because, you know, like living in a war is not like seeing the news of a war, because of course you can emphasize with it. But when you are in a war and these things happen, it seems really unrealistic. And when you hear your father, your mother, your brother shouting, "We have to leave the house right now because it's gonna fall down on our heads," you really just think about yourself. You don't think of what you want to take with you. You don't think about really nothing except of yourself and your family. And that's something I've learned from my experience being in a war, is nothing is valuable in this life except of yourself, and nothing is valuable in your life except of who you are and how you present yourself to people and how you are with people. And that's all. The rest is just gonna go and come. Nothing else matters in life. I've seen a lot of strong images. I've seen dead bodies in the street. My neighbors were dead in front of my eyes. There was a lot of bombs. Also, there was a lot of bombs that were not forbidden to be happening in Yemen. Really, Yemen is destroyed, and it is really all of it destroyed. After Yemen, we moved back to Iraq for a year. Unfortunately, situations in Iraq it was not so good enough for us to stay. There was not war really in 2015. However, there was a lot of kidnapping. There was a lot of differences. People were still fighting about some religious things, and that are still going on, unfortunately. So we had to leave Iraq again. And this time we went to Turkey. In Turkey, there was really another adventure because we went from Iraq to Turkey by plane normally. However, in Turkey, we had to go to Greece illegally, which was by boat. In that journey, we have tried it many times because, of course, it's illegal. You go in a boat. It's really a long way to even go to the boat, because first from Istanbul you have to go in a car, and then you have to be in the mountains and really climb more or less like for 3-4 hours until you arrive to where you're meant to be. And from there you take the boat. We have tried this 3 times because in every time there was something wrong. First time there was the police from Turkey in the water telling the refugees to come off, like to go out, to leave. Otherwise they would flip the boat. So we had to leave. we had to go back and do the same process all over again. The second time, there was a lot of people in the boat, so we had to actually go back, otherwise we would have died. Third time, which was luckily, we could have done it. We were 4 boats in Turkey. When we, from Turkey to Greece, when we went out, and I still remember this day very clear in my head, because when we went out in the boat, there was 4 boats, and we were the only boat that arrived to the island of Greece. That's just 1% of really what happened to refugees in this way, because the war has destroyed people, and of course people not only leave because of war. In Iraq, the situations are after the invasion, 20 years before, it has really affected Iraq, and Iraq until now is not stable. The war in Yemen, until now, it's affecting people in Yemen, and there is a humanitarian crisis. And refugees in Greece, they're still affected by it because borders are closed. People are trying to get any way to leave. After this, we were in the borders of Macedonia in Greece. In the borders, we stayed, me and my family, for almost 6 months, trying to have our line to escape the borders. And really, Greece was the door to Europe, so we wanted to cross from there and go to another countries. Of course, all refugees that cross from Greece, from these borders, they either go walking or cars or many ways. Most of the time it's walking. So for example, we have a friend of my family, they walked for almost 15 days until they have arrived to a certain country. And of course, because it's all illegal, so there is a lot of factors that can happen in the way. In the borders, after all what happened to me in these 2 wars and all the images, I think it was also one of the most difficult period of my life, because just seeing all this and being helpless, and you cannot do anything about it, even though if you're trying to do much by anything you can, it's really not going to help. People in the borders really live bad, really bad. People who has no money to buy the tent, they have to sleep outside. So if it is winter, it's winter. People sleep just in the like this. And the door, which was like the door when you cross the borders, it closed. They closed it. So all the refugees that were there, they had to find another way, with the United Nations or with another ways. However, we have decided to go back to Athens and search for organizations, because in the UN and there especially, there was millions and millions and millions of people, and we knew we would have to live there. And I still have friends that are there, living there since many years, and they're still not out, because there's no way. But when we came back from Athens, every single day trying to search for an organization that would help refugees legally, and we finally found a relocate program, which was a program for refugees that was legally takes refugees out of Athens, out of Greece in general. And we were lucky enough, after 6 months, so 6 months in the border, 6 months in Greece, living with different families in one apartment, we have been lucky enough to be chosen to Spain. Sorry. And that's where I am at right now. This picture is a picture that really affects me every time I speak about it, because I've said before, and I've mentioned about how in the war and in situations like this, you really want to just save yourself. and also about appreciating everything you have in your life, if it was from simple to nothing. Because in the borders, we really were fighting for a piece of bread. There was a lot of organizations and a lot of people that were coming and giving people food and helping people because there was no other way. But of course, it was not enough for millions of refugees. For a whole family, you have to have one piece of bread and you have to share it because sharing is caring. After this, really also realized how important it is to really appreciate every single thing. And this time, especially with everything that is happening in Turkey and Syria, there is a lot of sensitive time because, like not having a house to live, not having a roof in your house, not being sure that you're going to live the next day is a really difficult thing. So I hope that I can just give one message, which is to appreciate everything you have and not to take it for granted, because everything can change in one day. That's another picture in the borders. And now I just really want to, first of all, thank you for listening to me and think about what I've said. And please, if anyone has any question, I'm very open to any question. And yeah.
Thank you for your presentation.
Powerful and so moving. Yulia, now I go from one of my star students to another one of my star students, two students who I know are going to change the world. Yulia, the floor is yours.
I wanted to ask a question to Zara. If she faced lack of understanding and empathy from people from abroad who luckily never experienced war, and how she dealt with it.
I think this is a really sensitive topic because what I really dislike in these situations is I don't like when people feel sorry for me. I like people to emphasize with me, to feel the pain I've felt, to feel the suffering I've suffered, but I don't want people to feel sorry for me, or I don't want people to try to, people can never understand this type of situations because they've not lived it. What we luckily, and I'm very happy I've went through what I went because I've took a positive experience from it, is I can go and talk to people about it and actually tell people what happened, to understand what is the war that happened, how I'm lucky enough to be alive, and what is the message I can share from it. So there people don't understand, and there is some people that really emphasize and emphasize the situation and really empathize with you. However, there is a lot of the other side of the people that sometimes they really make you feel bad about what you've went through, and they make you struggle of what you went through, even though you're trying to move on. Of course, these things you will never forget in your life. Even I know I'm never going to forget these things in my life or the images I've seen in my life. However, I always try to take positive aspect from it. And thank you for the message.
Thank you, Yulia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Zara, for sharing. So again, good morning, everyone. My name is Yulia Rudenko. I'm 22 and I come from Ukraine. Currently, I'm in Italy because here I'm doing my master's in international security. And thank you very much, Dr. Al-Marashi, for inviting me to speak today on my work experience. I will probably be speaking on behalf of many Ukrainians because all of us are living through this collective trauma, and as humans we experience same emotions, I would say. So today is the 23rd of February, and I remember this day exactly 1 year ago. In the morning, I went and had my perfect workout in the gym. Then I bought my little cute outfit. I made appointment for doctors and for my nails for the next day. I also had this amazing yoga flow before going to bed. I set my alarm at 7 a.m. I wanted to wake up fresh and early and to be ready for the new day. And as I was falling asleep, I didn't know that I still had 6 more hours of peace, because at 5 a.m. on February 24th, which is tomorrow, my partner woke up me saying that those 3 words that I will never forget. He said, "Darling, the war started." And from that moment on, whenever someone wants to call me early on 5 a.m., please don't, because I'm going to have a heart attack from that. Usually it would take me very long to get up from bed after my alarm, but that was not the case. After that call, I did not have such a problem. I had another challenge, which was to wake my parents, who are very sensitive people, and my mom, who is even more sensitive with those news. And I had no idea how to go about this, because this is not the kind of situation you find yourself in on a daily basis. So I took a deep breath in, deep breath out, and I came to my mom and I said, "Mom, don't worry, but the war started." And I had to repeat this a couple of times, because it's difficult to process this information. As she was fully awake, I saw my dad wearing his military uniform and taking up the gun. And we started to pack immediately. At first, I packed my suitcase with my outfits, skincare, makeup, and all the things that I back then regarded as important, because I also refused to believe that this is what was happening. But then my dad gave me that particular look, and I realized that I had to repack. I also booked tickets to a safer part of Ukraine, because at that point I went to Chernihiv, which is a city bordering Belarus. It's only 1 hour car ride to Belarus. So staying in Chernihiv was not an option anymore. But here is where this excessive, negatively masculinity from my dad, a person who was brought up in Soviet Union, played a cruel joke on us, because he said, "Yulia, stop panicking. Don't be so dramatic. We're not going anywhere." And this was this rejection of reality on his side. This is something he deeply regrets, even now, even today. So he was not the only person to refuse to believe the reality, because during the first days of invasion, some of our professors back home would still have online lectures and mark our attendance. Anyways, me, my mom, and my 5-year-old sister moved from our apartment, since it was very close to a military object. That means it was under a risk of attack, to my grandparents' house. We considered this place to be safe, because it was located in a residential area with a lot of beautiful gardens, a lot of private homes, and at first sight, it was free from conflict. But we would soon find out that not for too long. We somehow lived through the day, but then the night came, and that's when we heard shellings for the first time. Luckily, Ukrainian grandmothers have special holes underneath their floorboards to have some cold accommodation for storage of jarred potatoes, cucumbers, and tomatoes, not to take up space in the fridge. So that is where we would hide, so the house wouldn't fall off on our heads, just in case. We brought down mattresses, we wore our coats. It was February, it was very cold in Ukraine back then. And on the first night, there were already 7 people in a tiny underground room. It was my 2 grannies, my grandfather, my cousin, who also came from another city to Chernihiv just to visit, my mom, my little sister, and I. When the bombardings began, we heard the floor above us shake. Soon we would feel the whole house above us shaking, and the terrible noises would just come closer. At that moment, we would cover our ears with hands. We would open our mouth to protect our ears from being ruptured. And on the next day, we would go outside just to see how our neighbors are. And we saw fire, because a mine landed somewhere nearby. And later we would find out that that mine actually hit the garage, and 7 people, the whole family who was hiding in the garage, were murdered. Whenever the bombardments would approach, my 5-year-old sister would start being very nervous, and we would make up a little story that that's just thunder and rain. But you know how children are, they never believe it. So that was also the case for her, because she heard so much already. And this was the moment where I learned to be truly adult, which is to manage emotions for the sake of protecting the sister. And on the second day, Russia destroyed the power infrastructure, electricity infrastructure in my city. So we sit in underground with no light. And again, the most difficult part about it was to, what do you do to a kid who is underground in cold with no light and proper treats like sweets and fruits? But we managed. My grandfather made a lamp. We also found an old piece of paper, some pencils, and she would draw pictures of flowers on a white piece of paper by the flickering light. And that is when I cried for the first time since the beginning of the invasion. So we stayed like this, almost not seeing light and proper food and water for 4 days in this underground little room. And with no electricity, food, or proper water, we grew weak. We would begin coughing. Our weight loss was not that far behind, and we also had to use buckets as toilet, because sometimes it was too much of shellings. We couldn't even go up to use a proper restroom. And I remember shame burning on my cheeks as I had to use bathroom in front of my family and my grandfather. And at that point, it became clear that no civilian area was free from Russian bombardments. And later, as war continued and is continuing now, it is obvious that war crimes, which is targeting civilian areas, are the methods of warfare for Russia. As we know, as of today, 7,000 civilians were killed in this war since last year. Among them are 500 kids. But while staying abroad, I have not once heard that this number is not too big to complain about it. And that, for example, in Iraq and Afghanistan, there were more casualties. And I am trying to remind people around me that conflicts around the world are not the conflicts Olympics, and that there is a human life behind any statistic. And to be honest, I have to remind this to myself as well. And because the scariest part of the war is getting used to it and just scrolling emotionlessly through the pictures of murdered people. Because we get used to everything. At first, the emotions we experienced were a lot of adrenaline, a lot of fear, but also the sense of community, because every day, even though we had no mobile connection, we would find ways to check on our family members and friends. And we literally, with no exaggeration, would ask the question, are you alive? Is everyone in your family alive? We would also contact our neighbors who lived a bit further away, that be careful, the bombs are approaching. So the community was definitely built. However, as we managed to evacuate, we would experience the guilt of survivor and question ourselves, why is it us who survived, not our neighbors? Or I question myself, why is it me who is safe and sound, but not my high school best friend who lost her leg and almost died because she couldn't get proper treatment in a hospital, which was also bombarded by Russian troops. Apart from the guilt of survivor, a lot of conflict survivors experienced the trauma of a witness, because whenever we read terrible news and see those pictures, we may feel the same way as actually people who observed those events in real life. And today, it's been 1 year since the war started, and we sometimes experience empathy fatigue, which serves as protection mechanisms, but we still remind ourselves to keep donating and keep checking on each other, because the war has become a part of us. It's a part of our personality, it's a part of our daily life, and I don't think it will ever go away. Because those of us who managed to evacuate far away and became refugees, they panic whenever they cannot reach their families, whenever Russia bombarded a residential area in their city. And those who stayed in Ukraine experience the feeling that their life does not belong to them anymore and they have no control over it. This is because sometimes, whenever electricity infrastructure is bombarded all over Ukraine, people have no light from 4 to 8 hours, and it can happen any day, and you never know. However, you should still plan your life. You should still plan brushing your teeth, because sometimes there is no water, no hot water either. And since the last year, none of my friends have ever told me that they were happy, they were excellent, they were brilliant whenever I ask them how they are. Because having a lasting war in my country, and I think that Sarah and other people who went through this feels like having a sick parent or a sick child who has a very dangerous disease and can die anytime, but not being able to help. So that's a scar on the heart that's always bleeding, no matter how much time passes, I think. And now I think this is what I wanted to bring to this event today. I appreciate your attention, and I encourage anyone who has friends in a country that is war-torn to check up on them, because it's very important, even though it's symbolic, or to put up a story on Instagram or Facebook. It is very important for people, even though it is very symbolic. I interview a lot of victims who, for example, lost their children who were babies in the war. And I would expect them to be reluctant to share and to shut in. However, they're very happy to, because I think it takes away a bit of pain once the story is shared. And thank you for your attention.
I want to say something to you, Julia. I mean, from a refugee to a refugee, from a person who also shares some of these moments. I want to tell you that I know it feels like you have a lot of weight in your shoulders, even though you're one person and you want to change something. Trust me, the more you pray and the more you forgive yourself that you're not responsible for anything, it will be less heavier for you. The more you... I know it's difficult and it will be difficult, but I just want, because the way you speak about it is really reminding me of the way I used to speak about it. Really sentimental, really, really deep, and really, it's really, really fresh. I really just hope the best for you, and thank you for, of course, sharing all these moments. I hope all your family and friends are okay and everyone is okay. Please loosen the weight in your shoulder, pray for them, and that's the only thing we can do. And thank you again for sharing your story.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
My two students, I'm so proud of both of you. And hopefully the Fund for American Studies will bring Yulia to Prague for a reunion. It was surreal that in 2019, we were in a karaoke bar with two Afghans, and how, you know, your lives have been, well, upended. Yulia, I have a special guest to introduce. Mira Rubin is from House of Ukraine, so from a Ukrainian in Trento, Italy. Can you tell everyone your Instagram account? Because you have a couple of links. If any of you want to help, can you tell them to follow you on Instagram? What is your handle?
Can I write it in the chat of this Zoom meeting?
Write it in the chat. and
Okay,
then-
perfect.
Now, I want to thank the president of the House of Ukraine. The House of Ukraine is an institution based in Balboa Park. Mira Rubin is the president. She just came from an event at Balboa Park this morning, drove up to North County. So I'm so grateful. I know this is a busy time for you, so to come on the 1-year anniversary to speak is something that I really appreciated. I'm going to pull up your slides. And then, of course, if you could announce the events tomorrow, let's hope the weather is going to cooperate.
Hi, thank you, Yulia, for the story. I don't know, where's the camera?
Camera's there, so you can see you.
Thank you for the story. Дуже тобі дякую.